Discover the inspiring journey of a $5 blind date that revealed an amazing connection. Unbelievable. Sarah wiped down the counter at the diner for the 1,000th time that week, her mind swirling with disarray. It was always the same routine: school drop-off, long shifts serving plates of greasy burgers, and then home to a house too big without him. Every night she tucked her kids into bed, their laughter lingering in the air like a bittersweet melody, while she curled into the silence, grasping at the threads of a joy now frayed. How could she even think about dating? The idea felt laughable, almost insulting, in light of the grief that had tangled itself around her heart. Yet, her best friend, Jenna, insisted that this blind date could be a way to glimpse sunlight through the storm. As she took a deep breath, the clock ticked toward the hour that would bring her the $5 blind date. The thought twisted in her stomach: had she truly let herself sink so low? Would this be another bite-sized disappointment to chew on? Trembling with uncertainty, she glanced in the mirror, seeing a face marked by worry instead of the vibrancy she'd once worn. The prospect of putting herself out there felt like attempting to walk a tightrope strung high over the abyss of her insecurities. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can, leave a like. It really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. They met at the park, where Jake, a mechanic whose ragged charm felt familiar in its scruffiness, sat on a blanket, nervously tapping a fork. His eyes held stories, and beneath the worries of lost bills and parent-teacher conferences, she saw flickers of understanding. They began sharing shifted lives, where late-night homework turned into desperate phone calls about car troubles, and juggling bills became a dance neither of them felt skilled enough to perform. Yet, as they laughed, a spark ignited through the veil of grief that cocooned her, but as the evening deepened and shadows crept closer, so did the reality of their lives. Sarah's thoughts twisted as her phone buzzed with news of an unexpected job offer in another city, one that could grant a brighter future for her children if she could only muster the courage to uproot their lives again. The thought throbbed in her mind, competing with newfound warmth that bloomed beside Jake. Could she bring herself to tear her children from their familiar playgrounds, the only home they had ever known? Meanwhile, Jake wrestled with his own ghosts as the conversation inevitably shifted to family. His estranged father, the one who left him in pursuit of wealth, was suddenly offering him a way out. That glimmer of hope intertwined with the shame and anger he felt towards the idea of accepting charity. Could simple feelings of familial connection weigh against principles he fought so hard to uphold? As Jake shared his hidden passion for painting, his voice cracked slightly, revealing layers of his life that screamed for acknowledgement. Just as the air thickened with intimacy, ringing laughter turned somber again. The weight of looming decisions pressed upon them. What would they choose in that moment? Comfort in doubt, or the risk of pursuing what might flourish? The sun dipped low, casting their silhouettes long and uncertain. With their laughter fading into an unsteady silence, they stood on the brink of choices that could either bind them or push them apart, a question hanging heavy between them: could love, raw and unguarded, blossom amidst the storm? The silence stretched, wrapping around Sarah and Jake like heavy fog. Decisions loomed before them, and for a moment, the distance between their worlds felt enormous. The playful banter that had sparked a flicker of potential dwindled in the face of uncertainty. Sarah felt her heart race, the weight of her responsibilities gnawing at her resolve. In one breath, she considered the job offer that could lift her family from their current struggles, while in the next, she savored the warmth of Jake's laughter, a soothing balm against the crumbling edges of her life. Do you ever think about just going for it? Jake asked, his brow furrowing as he searched Sarah's eyes. There was a vulnerability in his tone, as though he, too, was unearthing thoughts that had been buried deep. Going for what? She replied, caught off guard. Whatever it is that makes you happy. Leaving the past behind and taking the plunge into something new. His sincerity pulled her in. There was a kindred spirit in his struggle, one that felt like she'd known him for ages even if they'd only just met. His words hung in the air, intoxicating her with an unexpected rush of possibility. Only moments before, Sarah had felt anchored to her present, but now, she sensed a tide turning. The idea of leaving everything behind was terrifying, yet envisioning a brighter future stirred a long-forgotten yearning deep within her. I think about it all the time," she revealed, her voice wavering. "But what if it's just another way to fail?" Doubt crept back in, tantalizingly familiar. Fear had always been an unwelcome companion. Jake leaned closer, his gaze unwavering. "Did you ever think that failing might be part of the journey? What if that $5 date is just a stepping stone for something greater?" The thought of them, two flawed individuals finding their way together, shimmered against her inner turmoil. She chuckled softly at the absurdity of it all. Here she was contemplating the complexities of her life with a man she barely knew. And yet, with each exchange, it felt as if they were peeling back layers of one another, laying bare soul to soul. As the stars pricked the darkening sky, the gravity of their conversation pulled them deeper into introspective territory. Sarah's internal compass spun wildly. Accepting that job would mean uprooting her children, a notion almost unthinkable. Yet sitting before Jake, she felt the whispers of ambition rekindle. Was it selfish to pursue a dream just because she feared change? She cleared her throat, her hands fidgeting as a revelation sparked. Support came from the unlikeliest of places. "You know," she began, a newfound determination edging into her voice, "maybe it's time I start taking risks. For my kids, for me, even for us." Jake smiled, a glimmer of hope dancing in his eyes. "That's the spirit. Sometimes our greatest challenges lead to our most incredible discoveries." The words washed over her, challenging the lingering question of whether vulnerability was a weakness or a strength. Perhaps both were necessary to break free from the stagnant life she felt trapped in. The moment hung thick until Sarah finally asked, "So, what is the next step for you?" Jake hesitated, conflicted. "I need to face my father," he said, the weight of his unfinished story palpable. "It's time I make my own choices, not based on his expectations but my own desires." The air crackled with possibilities, the sunset yielding to twilight. In that instant, Sarah felt a shift, not just in her heart but in her very identity. The connection she feared was trivial now blossomed as they stood on the precipice, ready to discover not just themselves but the paths weaving toward each other. But just as certainty began to settle, Sarah's phone buzzed again, bringing with it a message about the job application deadline. The pressure swelled anew, torn between she and Jake. The very foundation of their conversation stood on shaky ground. With the stakes evidently pressing, what would the next heartbeat bring for them both? Would fear or hope dictate their next moves? Sarah's heart thudded against her chest as she read the message. The deadline loomed, as heavy as the weight of her obligations. The impulsive thrill of contemplating change clashed violently with the safety of her current existence. She glanced at Jake. The trust that had formed between them was as fragile as glass, and now it felt like it could shatter with one wrong decision. "What if I say yes?" The word slipped from her mouth unbidden, a daring whisper against the backdrop of uncertainty. The question hung, waiting for the answer in the silence. Jake's eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and encouragement flickering across his face. "Then you'll take the first step towards something new," he replied gently, his voice wrapping around her like a lifeline. Imagine what could be possible. Yet Sarah felt the familiar grip of hesitation tighten around her resolve. The risk of uprooting her family weighed heavily, and with that came the fear of failure not just for herself, but for her kids. Torn between two worlds, she was caught in a storm of conflicting emotions, battling the longing for change against the tether of responsibility. "I can't just throw it all away," she muttered, more to herself than to him. "What if this job leads to something terrible? My kids rely on me. What will they think if I decide to leave everything?" "Look at it this way," Jake said, leaning forward, his intensity sparking something within her. "Stagnation can be just as damaging. They'll see the courage you have to chase your dreams, and that's a powerful lesson. Isn't that what we want for them? To live fully. As Jake spoke, a small seed of realization began to blossom within her. Why was she so quick to dismiss the potential of a brighter future? She'd spent too long dismissing her own aspirations, allowing fear to dictate her every thought. Now, faced with the thoughts of another person who believed in her, she felt a glimmer of strength surfacing beneath the tide of fear. Maybe, she began, allowing the idea to unfurl, maybe I can try for both. I could pursue the job while figuring out a way to keep my children secure. They don't have to be at risk. Jake observed her, the corner of his mouth quirking in a smile that felt contagious. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for. Embracing change can be done while maintaining what matters most. Reinvention doesn't have to occur at the expense of your family. Her spirit lifted. What is the worst that can happen? She surprised herself by asking. I take the job and fail. Or you succeed, and discover a part of yourself you never knew existed. Jake's words echoed in her mind, stirring the embers of ambition she hadn't acknowledged for ages. In that moment, she resolved to embrace the uncertainty rather than be ensnared by it. Perhaps her job application could symbolize more than just a desperate attempt to revitalize her life, it could validate her belief in herself. I'm going to do it, she declared, her voice laced with newfound conviction. I'll apply. I have to at least try. The warmth in Jake's gaze ignited a spark of confidence within her. However, just as a sense of elation began to wash over her, another message pinged on her phone. It was from her boss, a reminder about the upcoming meeting that could scrutinize her. An uncomfortable tightness gripped Sarah's stomach, and she felt the familiar shadows of doubt creep back in. Would she truly pursue this new path, or would she remain shackled to the past? Maybe it's also time to face my own truth, she thought, realizing her journey was far from over. There were still pieces of her life she needed to confront, both professionally and personally. The night was still young, and as Sarah looked at Jake, she felt an undeniable shift within her, a burgeoning awareness that change was ahead, no matter the cost. They had each vowed to take control of their own lives. But before she could voice her plans, Jake's expression became serious, drawing her into deeper contemplation about their lives. So are you ready to confront whatever fears are holding you back? Jake asked, his gaze steadying her swirling thoughts. Uncertainty loomed, but this time, it no longer felt debilitating. Absolutely, Sarah replied. It's time to face the truth. Whatever that might mean. And as she ventured into an uncertain future, she wondered how many revelations would emerge from this newfound perspective. The challenge awaited, and the time had truly come to see what awaited them both. Sarah woke to the soft light filtering through her bedroom curtains, the warmth of the sun mingling with her lingering determination. Last night's conversation with Jake echoed in her mind, igniting an unexpected resolve. She took a deep breath, contemplating the path she had decided to tread, the risky yet exhilarating path toward change. The day ahead loomed with challenges, starting with the meeting with her boss. Gripped by a tight knot of anticipation in her stomach, Sarah pulled herself from bed and dressed with a sense of purpose. As she applied her makeup, she practiced her presentation in front of the mirror, rehearsing her words despite the faint tremor in her voice. If she could confront her fears here, perhaps tackling the job application wouldn't seem so daunting. At work, the atmosphere buzzed like a hive of activity. Colleagues moved about with confidence, unaware of the chaos surging beneath her calm exterior. Sarah settled at her desk, pushing past her nerves with the encouragement of her newfound mindset. She focused on the task at hand, preparing for the meeting that would either solidify her current role or challenge her aspirations. As her boss droned on about quarterly projections, Sarah's mind drifted. A successful presentation meant she could maintain her stability while laying the groundwork for new opportunities. Each statistic he shared felt less like pressure and more like a stepping stone toward her broader goals. The meeting wrapped up, and as Sarah rose to summarize her contributions, she felt a newfound boldness surge through her. I believe we can increase our productivity by focusing on the strengths of our team, she declared, her voice steady and clear. She described strategies she had never dared to propose before, weaving in ideas inspired by the visceral drive inside her. With every word, she felt the collective gazes of her colleagues draw toward her with a mix of surprise and respect. When the meeting concluded, her boss approached her with an approving nod. "That was strong work, Sarah. I didn't expect such innovative suggestions. Let us discuss them further next week." A wave of relief washed over her. This tasted like success, a stepping stone toward the professional life she longed for. Yet, amidst her triumph, the gnawing sensation of doubt resurfaced. Could she sustain this momentum? Would her plan to apply for a new job falter once again? Later that day, as she sat at her desk, she opened a blank document on her computer, hesitant fingers hovering above the keys. Fear crept back in, but now it was transformed. It felt less like a shackle and more like a challenge. "Just start," she whispered to herself, and her fingers began to type. It was liberating. Each sentence served not only as an application but as an affirmation of her worth and capability. She poured her heart into describing her past experiences, painting a vibrant picture of who she could be if given the chance to prove herself. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, she hit send, a rush of exhilaration coursing through her veins. There was no turning back now. Even if the outcome was uncertain, she had taken a risk, and that alone ignited a fire within her. Later that evening, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, her children laughing in the background. She felt the weight of her responsibilities, but now there was also a lightness, a sense that pursuing her own dreams didn't diminish her ability to be a good mother. Rather, it was becoming a powerful lesson for her kids about following their passions. As she prepared dinner, she received a text notification. It was from Jake, asking how her day went. A smile crept onto her face as she typed back, explaining the meeting's outcome and her application submission. His reply was swift, exuding excitement and motivation. It kept the flame kindled within her heart, but as she put her phone down and turned her attention back to the kids, a flicker of worry lingered. What if the new job came with expectations she couldn't meet? What if she faced judgment from those around her? The conflict surged again, the boldness of her decisions clashing with her fears. Tomorrow would bring more challenges. And as Sarah contemplated her next steps, she realized she had to prepare for what lay ahead, armed with a renewed sense of purpose but still bracing for vulnerabilities. Would she withstand the pressures or let them overwhelm her? Determination gripped her anew as night fell, leaving her anxious to face the unforeseen complexities of her chosen path. Tomorrow, she would confront those fears head-on, and she would need to summon every ounce of strength within her. Would the first ripples of change reveal the depth of her hidden capabilities, or would they sweep her under? The dawn brought a chilly breeze that swept through the open window. Sarah wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and stood gazing at the street outside. With each exhale, she felt the remnants of yesterday's anxiety dissipate slightly, replaced by a burgeoning sense of purpose. The decision to pursue a new job was not only a career shift, it represented an awakening of her ambitions, a bridge to the dreams she had buried. As she sipped her coffee, she reflected on her conversation with Jake the previous evening. His belief in her potential lingered unshakable and encouraging. His encouragement didn't just elevate her spirit, it also stirred an instinctual drive to step beyond her comfort zone. Today, she promised herself, she would prepare for the interview, a formality that could lead to transformation. Arriving at work, the morning was quieter than usual. Colleagues were absorbed in their tasks, but Sarah felt a palpable tension in the air. Instead of retreating to her desk, she ventured to the small meeting room that had always loomed as a reminder of her insecurities. It was time to claim her space, a strategy she had learned from her recent experiences. Inside the quiet room, Sarah positioned herself at the table. She was here to consolidate her thoughts, to breathe life into her aspirations. Fumbling through materials she had gathered, she structured her thoughts on potential answers for interview questions. Each scenario she envisioned felt like a mini-rehearsed performance. What would she say about her strengths? How would she navigate weaknesses? Despite her preparation, self-doubt flooded back. What if she stumbled over her words? What if they saw through the bravado she was trying to embody? But then she paused, shutting her eyes and allowing the doubts to wash over her. She recalled the energy from the meeting when she had shared her ideas so confidently. She was capable, she had achieved this moment. This was not just about landing a job, it was about redefining herself. She opened her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to write. Word after word flowed from her mind to the page, each sentence building confidence. As she drafted responses, she also articulated her passion for the work, the hunger to contribute in ways that aligned with her values. With every line, she knitted together a narrative that mixed vulnerability with ambition. For the first time, Sarah wasn't just filling out an application, she was crafting a vision for her future. Stepping out of the meeting room, she felt lighter. Each stride was imbued with renewed purpose. Her boss's acknowledgement of her previous contributions steeled her resolve. She understood now that she was more than her past limitations, she embodied possibility. When the day drew to a close, she received an unexpected email notification. The hiring manager from her prospective job had followed up to schedule an interview. Excitement mingled with anxiety, sparking a heightened awareness within her. There was little time to waste, she needed to refine her strategies further and rehearse her approach. She sat at her desk, her heart racing as she formulated key points she wanted to address in the interview. But amidst her preparations, she sensed shadows creeping in, the lurking fears of judgment, inadequacy, and uncertainty. The very real possibility of failure draped over her enthusiasm, pressing down like a stone, shaking off the negativity. She reminded herself that growth emerged from discomfort. She flirted with the thought of calling Jake to share her news but hesitated. What if he was disappointed by her future uncertainties? What if she failed to meet expectations? In a moment of clarity, she acknowledged that each candidate who walked into that interview room would carry their doubts. It wasn't just about impressing others, this was an opportunity to express who she was, showcasing her capacity to thrive. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah lay in bed, oscillating between excitement and anxiety. The interview was big, and she yearned to prove herself. Tomorrow, the moment of truth awaited, and beneath the layers of uncertainty lay her desire for growth. Would she rise to the occasion, or would she let weakness hold her back? The shadows loomed, but the light of her ambition called out, drawing her closer. What awaited her in the interview room could alter the course of her life significantly. She knew it, she could feel it. Would she find the courage to embrace the unknown, or would she let this chance slip away? The moment dawned bright and clear, but Sarah's heart pounded like a drum. She stood in front of her closet, clothes scattered around her, each piece weighing heavily on her decision. What did she want to convey about herself? A polished image suggested confidence, yet she feared it might feel inauthentic. She grasped a blouse, soft and simple, and the decision felt right, a balance of professionalism and comfort. As she prepared, the cacophony of anxiety and anticipation simmered in her mind. She practiced her breathing, focusing on every inhale, allowing the oxygen to expand her thoughts. Each exhale was a release, an opportunity to shed her doubts. Visualizing the interview, she imagined entering the room, greeting the panel, and feeling the warmth of support instead of scrutiny. What would it be like to engage in a conversation about ideas rather than performance metrics? Arriving at the building 10 minutes early, Sarah felt the concrete structure pulsate with energy. She stepped into the lobby, the echo of her heels mirrored by the reassuring cadence of her heartbeat. Finding a quiet corner, she pulled out her notes and reviewed them once more, the words striking a familiar chord of determination within her. She had rehearsed her achievements until they danced on the tip of her tongue, ready to articulate her vision and goals, but then the elevator door opened, and in stepped a group of candidates. Their chatter filled the space with unyielding confidence, and Sarah's certainty wavered. Were they more experienced? Did they have connections that she lacked? Chucking her notes back in her bag, she consciously grounded herself, recalling Jake's supportive words. No one could take her unique perspective away. Before she could spiral deeper into self-doubt, she intertwined her fingers and focused on her core values, the very essence of her professional journey. This wasn't just about winning the job, it was about sharing her genuine passion for the role. When her name was finally called, she felt a surge of adrenaline. Entering the interview room was like stepping onto a stage she had long desired to inhabit. The panel awaited her, their expressions neutral but their eyes observing intently. She began with her prepared introduction, delivering her thoughts with steady clarity. The questions flowed, each inquiry revealing layers of her experience and aspirations. As she answered, she found unexpected joy in the dialogue. When asked about her most significant challenge, Sarah opened up about a project that had initially spiraled out of control, honestly articulating the lessons learned and how it ignited her resilience. This was transforming. Her vulnerability became a bridge, connecting her to the panel, revealing not just a candidate but a person forged by experience. As the interview wrapped up, Sarah felt an undeniable shift. She had not only expressed her qualifications but had woven a narrative of her journey that spoke of dedication and evolution. The panel's nods and engaging questions had transformed her fears into fuel. Driving home, the weight of uncertainty had lifted, replaced by optimism for the possibilities ahead. She had ventured into the unknown and emerged with newfound clarity about her capabilities. The clarity was not simply about this job but about what she wanted in her career and life. Arriving home, Sarah reached for her phone instinctively, needing to share the seismic shift she had experienced. But the narrative of her day now extended beyond pleasing someone else. This time, she would sit with her truth, reflect on how far she had come, and consider where she wanted to go next, without seeking validation. As she settled in, she recalled the blend of emotions swirling inside her during the interview: anxiety, excitement, and growing self-assurance. She knew that whatever happened next, she had stepped into her power. Yet, as the evening darkened, a familiar nagging thought intruded: could she sustain this courage beyond today's experience? Tomorrow held its own set of challenges. What lay beyond this interview could either be a new beginning or a lesson waiting to unfold. Would she continue to embrace risks after tasting the sweetness of potential, or would the fear of rejection pull her back into shadow? The uncertainty lingered like a promise, ready to be unraveled. The morning after the interview, Sarah woke up earlier than usual, fueled by a mix of excitement and apprehension. She lingered in bed, the sunlight pouring in through the window illuminating the plans swirling in her mind. She had envisioned a career shift that felt deeply authentic, but now, with the interview behind her, the magnitude of her aspirations loomed larger. In the quiet of her small apartment, she grabbed her journal, the ink-stained pages filled with reflections from her past. Today's initial task was simple: to outline her long-term goals. She paused, pen hovering over the paper. What did she really want? Was it limited to securing a job, or did it extend to something more profound like reforming her relationship with fear, embracing vulnerability, and owning her narrative? Wanting to flesh out her thoughts further, she made a cup of coffee and carried it to her favorite nook by the window. As she sipped slowly, the warmth spreading through her, she reflected on her recent shift in perspective. Emphasizing connection over competition had opened her eyes to new possibilities. Maybe the ideal career wasn't just about what she could achieve individually, but also how she could help others. With deliberation, she began jotting down her thoughts. Create a safe work environment where everyone's ideas are valued. Next, she noted, innovate rather than conform. The pages began to fill with bullet points ranging from team-building initiatives to personal development strategies. This was more than a list, it was a manifesto of her values. Yet, amidst the clarity, doubt once again crept in. What if the job she was vying for would ultimately limit her creativity, stifle her passion? What if she faced obstacles that made her previous anxieties resurface? She dismissed the fear and pushed back against the voice that questioned her worth. This was her journey, her chance to write the script she yearned for. Emboldened, she decided to expand her horizons by reaching out to mentors. She pulled out her laptop and began drafting emails, explaining her ambitions and seeking guidance. Each click of the keyboard felt like a reaffirmation of her commitment. As she pressed send on the last message, her phone buzzed an email notification. She hesitated, a mixture of trepidation and hope building within her. Could it be news from the interview panel? The thought sent her heart racing. Opening the email cautiously, she was greeted by a message from one of her former colleagues, inviting her to a networking event. Her mind raced with potential outcomes. Would attending this even give her the courage to speak about her aspirations? Could it lead to avenues she had yet to explore? The decision weighed on her. The last time she attended such an event, she had felt out of place, overwhelmed by more experienced participants. But now there was a different fire within her, a drive pushed by vulnerability rather than fear. Would she stand back or seize the opportunity for connection? With a determined heart, she quickly typed her RSVP, the simple movement feeling monumental. Sarah had committed to pushing the boundaries of her comfort zone, ready to engage with others who would challenge her growth. As she prepared for the evening, her emotions swirled, anticipation bolstered by anxiety. What if she found a community of like-minded individuals eager to share and grow with her? What if she encountered challenges that tested her resolve? That evening, as she stood in front of the mirror adjusting her outfit, she felt a simmering thrill. This was a crucial choice, one that might catapult her courage to new heights or reinforce her fears. With uncertainty lingering in the air, Sarah took a breath. It was time to step into the unknown again, where possibilities awaited her, where the next chapter of her professional journey truly began. Would she emerge from this event fortified, or would she feel the familiar pull of limitations grappling for her confidence? The horizon ahead shimmered with promise, ready to reveal itself. Stepping into the venue, Sarah felt the energy of the room pulse through her like an electric current. The noise of multiple conversations formed a backdrop of anticipation. She scanned the space, taking in clusters of professionals deep in discussion. Each face seemed confident, assured, and she felt a flare of doubt ignite within her. Was she truly ready for this? Grappling with her nerves, she reminded herself of the commitment she'd made to embrace vulnerability and seek connections that could elevate her journey. Deepening her breath, she edged toward a group gathered around a high table, their animated dialogue drawing her in. Each word seemed to shimmer with potential. With a gentle nudge from an internal voice urging her forward, Sarah introduced herself. "Hi, I'm Sarah. It's great to be here." Her voice wavered slightly, but the welcome smiles from others calmed the tension that threatened to overshadow her. Noticing a woman nearby, Sarah felt an immediate connection. Her name was Emily, a digital marketing manager who spoke with enthusiasm about a project blending art and technology to reach younger audiences. Intrigued, Sarah found herself immersed in a conversation, exchanging ideas with a fervor she hadn't anticipated. As the evening progressed, Sarah discovered others were also grappling with similar feelings of insecurity. This shared vulnerability made her pulse quicken with solidarity. She began to view the environment as an opportunity, not a battleground. The realization struck her: it was okay to be uncertain, to admit flaws. In fact, those were the very moments that encouraged growth. But amid this awakening, Sarah was hit with a deeper concern. What if these connections didn't materialize into anything meaningful? What if she walked away without the insights she yearned for? Moments of doubt rushed back, like an unwelcome intruder. "Sarah," Emily said, catching her mid-reflection. "You have such a refreshing perspective. Have you considered pursuing a role where you could focus on fostering creative collaborations? You could bring a lot to a team." The compliment felt like a spotlight illuminating her thoughts, a revelation she hadn't considered. As they continued to discuss the potential for creative leadership roles, Sarah felt inklings of confidence intertwining with her apprehensions. Her passion for nurturing creativity suddenly crystallized against the backdrop of her hesitations. This dialogue ignited a hunger within. She began to formulate ideas about projects she could spearhead, emphasizing collaborative environments where everyone would have a voice. But each potential goal battled with the louder whispers of self-doubt. She had always shied away from leadership, fearing rejection and incompetence. Yet, as she delved deeper into this idea with Emily, the fear began to soften. The conversations grew from casual exchanges to strategic brainstorming. Sarah found herself outlining steps to cultivate a nurturing climate. The energy was contagious, and she fed off the encouragement from her new acquaintances. By the end of the evening, the atmosphere had shifted. Sarah felt a newfound sense of belonging, a feeling she hadn't realized she craved. As she made her way toward the exit, her heart racing with excitement, she checked her phone. It was populated with messages from her mentors offering opportunities and insights. The threads of connection were multiplying, weaving a tapestry rich with possibilities. As she stepped into the cool night air, Sarah reflected on the transformative nature of the experience. She understood the next step was more than just honing skills, it involved building a community based on shared aspirations. But what if this community demanded a level of commitment she hadn't prepared for? Clarity settled in as she walked home, but uncertainty lingered. Hers was a journey of countless choices steeped in layers of accountability and ambition. The time had come to confront not only her dreams but the tangible steps required to pursue them. Tomorrow, she would review her goals and take bold strides toward the leadership she aspired to embody. But would the weight of those expectations provoke a fresh wave of self-doubt, threatening to unravel her newfound confidence? The dawn's awaiting light beckoned ominously, connected to the trials yet to come. The morning sun streamed through Sarah's window, illuminating the clutter of aspirations scattered across her desk. Notes from last night's conversations, sketches of potential projects, and reminders to herself awaited her focus. Yet, amid the bright light, shadows of doubt loomed large. She sat on the edge of her bed, wrestling with the weight of her aspirations. With each tick of the clock, the pressure mounted. As she sipped her coffee, Sarah stared at her vision board, symbols of goals and dreams that felt both tantalizing and out of reach. The idea of pursuing a leadership role had sparked a fire within her, but the responsibility it entailed seemed as vast as the ocean. Could she truly inspire a team? Did she possess the skills to cultivate collaboration, or was she merely chasing an illusion? Determined to banish uncertainty, she slid into her desk chair and opened her laptop. A blank page glared back, a stark reminder of her fear to articulate her thoughts. It was time to transform her ideas into actionable plans. The more she typed, the clearer her vision became. Sarah found herself crafting a list of objectives coalescing into a cohesive framework. Fostering creativity, encouraging collaboration, building community, the words flowed with fervor. Yet, as each bullet point emerged, an unwelcome thought crept in: what if she failed? What if her vision contradicted others' expectations? Her breath quickened, the tightness in her chest betraying her confidence. But then, she recalled the conversations with Emily, the flow of ideas, the shared uncertainty. Maybe vulnerability wasn't a weakness, maybe it was a strength. Perhaps leading from a place of authenticity was the key. Resolute, Sarah decided to reach out to Emily. They could brainstorm ideas for community-building workshops, exploring creative methodologies. The moment she pressed send, a sensation of relief washed over her. Initiative was being taken. Yet, beneath the surface, anxiety churned. Was she leaning too heavily on new connections? What if she couldn't measure up to their expectations? The day unfolded with a symphony of thought and reflection. Between meetings with mentors and intensive planning sessions, she scrutinized every aspect of her potential vision. Each mentor offered insights that prompted her to confront her underlying fears of leadership. A common theme emerged: authenticity was paramount. They encouraged her to embrace her voice, even as it trembled with uncertainty. By sunset, Sarah found herself standing on her balcony, staring into the vibrant canvas of the sky. The colors evoked a sense of hope, illuminating the path ahead. She pondered what it would feel like to lead, a blend of anxiety and exhilaration. Each flicker of doubt felt less like a barrier and more like a natural part of the journey, but just as her resolve appeared to crystallize, Sarah received a response from Emily that drew her back into a familiar state of discomfort. "I'm excited, but I have to ask, are you sure you want this? It might involve more than you anticipated. Leadership isn't always glamorous." The question hung in the air like a specter, forcing Sarah to confront the very concerns she had hoped to outrun. As she pondered the weight of Emily's words, she realized this was the crux of her personal development journey, the acceptance of the unknown. Embracing the possibility of failure or success meant acknowledging the risks that came with every aspiration. Sarah understood that the path to growth was indistinguishable from the path of discomfort. With the last light of the day fading, she made a silent vow. She would not let fear dictate her choices. Tomorrow, she would face this challenge head-on, forcing herself out of her comfort zone, embracing the prospect of leadership not just for herself, but for those her vision would eventually inspire. But was she truly ready for the sacrifices that leadership could demand? The shadows of the evening deepened, leaving her with a question that echoed through her mind. What sacrifices would she need to make to step fully into this role? The dawn broke, bathing Sarah's room in a golden hue, a stark contrast to the storm of thoughts swirling in her mind. Today was not merely another day, it was a pivotal point that would determine the course of her personal and professional life. As she prepared for the day, Sarah's heart raced with both excitement and apprehension. The transformative experiences of the past weeks had cultivated a new strength within her, one that whispered of possibility and leadership. She envisioned the workshops she and Emily would develop a space where creativity and collaboration flourished. Yet, the voice of doubt nagged insistently, warning her of potential failure and judgment. At work, Sarah found her thoughts consumed by her commitment to foster a nurturing environment. The upcoming meeting with her colleagues loomed large, a venue to not only present her ideas but to inspire those she collaborated with. In the quiet moments before it began, she closed her eyes, recalling Jake's supportive words, "Embracing change can be done while maintaining what matters most." The reminder steadied her resolve. This was not just about her, it was about creating a legacy of courage for her children and her peers. The meeting commenced, and as she stood before her colleagues, presenting her vision with clarity and passion, the room vibrated with anticipation. "I believe we need to harness our collective strengths," she proclaimed, her voice unwavering. "Together, we can build a culture rooted in creativity, where every idea is valued and our challenges transformed into innovative solutions." The response was palpable. Nodded heads and interjected enthusiasm underscored her confidence. Constructive feedback flowed, enriching her idea, igniting a collective spark of inspiration that left her exhilarated. After the meeting, as her teammates approached her to express their support, the shadows of self-doubt began to recede. She was not alone in her journey but rather standing on the edge of a vibrant community ready to embrace change. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah navigated her new role with a fierce determination. The workshops she collaborated on with Emily took shape, blossoming into events that energized her colleagues. They shared stories and discoveries, knitting a tapestry of mutual respect and creativity. Sarah's leadership style grew. It was defined by vulnerability and authenticity, inviting others to join her in unearthing their capabilities. The culmination of her hard work arrived with an invitation to speak at a local conference, an opportunity that terrified and thrilled her. Now, she wasn't merely a participant but a voice for the values she cherished. Standing at the podium, the light streaming down warmly, she shared her journey, the challenges she had faced and the resilience she had embraced. She spoke of how vulnerability, rather than a weakness, had ignited her growth. As the audience responded with applause, Sarah felt the weight of her self-doubt lift entirely. She had achieved more than she could have imagined, conquering not only fears about leadership but also redefining whom she was. Her children, witnessing their mother rise with confidence, learned resilience and the courageous pursuit of dreams. By the time she left the stage, Sarah was no longer the woman who had wrestled with apprehension. She was a leader, a mentor, and a beacon of hope for those who sought inspiration. The realization coursed through her veins: she was enough, just as she was. The connections made at that conference reinforced her belief in the power of community, and she found herself reaching out to others she had met, building relationships that would elevate her career further. As she returned home that evening, she reflected on the journey. The weight of uncertainty had transformed into an exhilarating sense of purpose. Love, in all its forms, had found her amidst the storms, be it through Jake's encouragement, her children's eyes looking up to her, or the vibrant community she had cultivated. It was time to celebrate a personal and professional metamorphosis that had unveiled her true potential. With renewed confidence, she resolved to continue pursuing her ambitions, knowing that every step taken was a leap toward what she was destined to achieve. Today marked the beginning of a path mapped by courage, creativity, and the unwavering belief that she could redefine her narrative. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now, because this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.